This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 524, Single Directory Components with DrupalEasy. On today's show, we are talking about single directory components, leveling up your skills, and how DrupalEasy can help with our guest, Mike Anello. We'll also cover Markdown Easy as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guest today is Mike Anello. Via Claude, Mike is co-founder and vice president of DrupalEasy, a Drupal training and consulting firm based in Central Florida, where he has been developing Drupal sites since 2007 and developed one of the first long-form Drupal career training programs, Drupal Career Online. He has been an integral part of the Drupal community for nearly 20 years. In 2024, he was honored with the Aaron Winborn Award for his personal integrity, kindness, and above and beyond commitment to the Drupal project and community. He spends his days working with clients as well as teaching long-form Drupal training classes, including professional module development and professional single directory components. Mike, welcome back to the show and thank you for joining us.
Always fun to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I'm Nick Lapham, founder at Enlightened Development, and today my co-hosts are Hayden Bailio, head marketing dragon at Hero Devs. Also joining us, Stephen Cross, founder and host at Talking Drupal. Welcome back.
Hello, internet friends.
The man behind the podcast emerges.
Glad you could join us last minute. John
Yeah,
was
happy to
having
be here.
internet troubles today, so Stephen graciously is stepping in. And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a principal solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted an easy way to use Markdown to write content in your Drupal site? There's a module for that. It's called Markdown Easy, and it was created in July 2023 by Mike Anello, otherwise known as Ultimike of DrupalEasy. It has 1.0.1 and 2.0 versions available, both of which work with Drupal 9 or later. It is actively maintained, has security and test coverage, and a documentation guide available. Does have 9 open issues, none of which are bugs against the 2.x branch, which is quite good considering it is officially in use by 556 sites according to Drupal.org. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Markdown is a popular lightweight markup language for creating formatted text using a plain text editor. Initially defined in 2004, Markdown grew out of existing conventions for formatting text in emails and Usenet posts. People like writing in Markdown because it allows them to focus on what's being said without the distraction of concerns about how it will look. With the Markdown Easy module installed, your Drupal site will now have a Markdown Easy text format available. Within the settings for that format, you can choose Standard Markdown, GitHub flavored Markdown, or Markdown Smorgasbord as the variant of Markdown syntax you want to use. Standard Markdown is the most restrictive, and the other two allow more elements to be included. You can also configure which HTML tags you want to allow as part of the normal text format configuration. It's worth noting that Dries has posted a couple of blogs about this module, the more recent about working with Mike to better handle HTML tags. So, Mike, what inspired you to write this module, and what can you tell us about the experience of collaborating with Dries?
So the inspiration, and I think anyone who's used the Markdown module on Drupal.org, if that's the machine name Markdown, possibly overwhelmed by its just level of configuration and what you need to do to actually use it first time out of the box. As well as I know for me, it hasn't been continuously maintained. It goes in fits and spurts a little bit. So I know when I was trying to go from 8 to 9 maybe, there's a big lag. So and I just thought it shouldn't be this hard, right? Because there's a library. There's a great common mark library that does all the work for you. We just need a simple Drupal wrapper around that. So that's what I did. I wanted a module, personally, I use it on DrupalEasy.com and other sites. I just wanted a module that was as simple as possible, secure by default, easy to maintain. And so that's what I ended up writing. And then the collaboration with Dries was kind of fun. He DM'd me out of the blue one day and was asking me questions about it. And I wanted to write this module in a way that I could reference it in some of my classes. So I definitely use best practices. It's got really good test coverage. And, Dries wanted to use it. He wanted to use it from a more power user standpoint and maybe remove some of the guardrails. And, Dries is a pretty bright guy, and he had some really good ideas for it that made sense. And in chatting with him about it, I figured out, like, we figured out how to implement these features without making it more complex, without, adding any additional hurdles, without lowering the security standards that I had. So we've implemented them, and Dries was in the issue queue. He was reviewing stuff. He was providing comments on it. So that was great. It was a fun little experience. And now with 2.0 out, if you go in the issue queue and look, we're really focused on modernizing the code base. So Nick actually just helped me the other day for DrupalEasy Show and Tell. We recorded a bit where we upgraded all the hooks to object-oriented hooks. We have another issue in the queue about getting rid of annotations and moving to PHP attributes. So I'm not looking to add more features to it. I'm just looking to make it very forward-looking, best practice focused, solid, reliable module.
I have to say, one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the one blog post by Dries was about how, by design, there's no actual like configuration page for the module itself. That there are certain things that if you want to change how it works, you actually need to either go into your settings.php, or it sounds like there's a drush command that you can use to sort of change a couple of those things. So I thought that was pretty interesting, especially for a module called Markdown Easy, that making some of those changes is almost more of like a power user way to
Right,
to make them.
because all of those changes reduce the security of the module, right? So a lot of it is about, not being tied to the limit HTML filter. So we didn't want people to get around issues, who didn't know better or new to Drupal, to get around issues by disabling that. We wanted them to make sure they understood the consequences of disabling that. So that's why we put it behind. It's basically a configuration value that doesn't have a UI. So it's not a custom drush command. It's drush, config set. But yeah, so it basically unlocks it. So okay, you know what you're doing, so have at it. But for everyone else, secure by default.
Yeah. And so I actually heard about this module from Dries's blog post as well. And I kind of looked for the issue just to see, because I was curious about the collaboration too. So I looked for the issue that he had worked on. And I noticed the implement OO hooks issue, and thought I would share some tips there. And that's how I got pulled into the show and tell, which was fun.
Yeah.
When is that episode coming out, by the way?
I think yours is next up, so probably this weekend. I believe yours is number 3. So we've had 2 out already, and don't quote me on that because we have 3 ready to go. I'm just not sure of the order. So
So the next couple of weeks.
yeah, something
Okay.
like that. The goal is to release one every week. That's the goal. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I recorded
Well,
one with Martin, what, a couple weeks
yeah, I
ago,
think I
something
think
like
I
that.
saw that one's out already, right?
That one's out.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
that one's nutty because it's on the storage entities module, which I really should have heard of by now, and I hadn't heard of it. So one of my students brought it up to me, and I looked at it, I'm like, "Why haven't I heard of this?" And it's Martin's, Martin is one of the maintainers, so I'm like, "Oh, that's perfect." So I didn't even look at it when the student brought it up. I think they brought it up in office hours. I'm like, "It's a perfect example of show and tell, where I'm gonna use something for the first time," and I asked Martin, and he was gracious enough to be my guardian angel on that one.
It was fun doing that show.
Well, thank you, Martin. If folks wanted to connect or suggest a module of the week, what's the best way for them to do that?
We're always happy to have lively discussions about potential candidates for the module of the week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or folks can reach out to me directly as ManClue on all of the Drupal and social platforms.
Awesome. See you next week.
See you then.
And here is Aaron to tell us about Drupal Camp Scotland.
Drupal Camp Scotland is back for 2025. Join us on Friday the 7th of November in the historic city of Edinburgh for a full day of sessions, networking and an evening social event. For more details and to get your tickets, visit the camp website at camp.drupal.scot.
Thank you, Aaron. And this is a rare event. We have 2 promos. So here's Martin to tell us about the Southwestern Ontario Drupal Camp.
Join us in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada for the first ever Southwestern Ontario Drupal Camp on October 24th. We'll have a full day of informative sessions, free lunch and refreshments, awesome networking opportunities, and more. Thanks to our generous sponsors, admission is free. Registration is now open. Visit swo.drupalcanada.org for more information.
Thanks, Martin. So let's start with kind of a high level question. Mike, can you tell our listeners, if they haven't heard about them yet, what are single directory components?
Single directory components are a way of, kind of organizing your Drupal theme into individual components. And you can think about a component as a portion of your page. Maybe it's a call out, maybe it's a block, maybe it's a heading, maybe it's a card, something like that. And the idea is that everything that 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 component needs is encapsulated in a single directory. So we're talking the template file, we're talking any JavaScript, and we're talking any CSS, as well as kind of the magic that brings it all together, which is this thing called a component.yaml file, which basically defines the schema for the props or the properties that can control that particular component. And obviously, there's a little bit more to all that, but that's the gist. It's just a way of putting a theme together, or assembling a theme with these individual building blocks or individual components that are self-contained.
I would go one step further that the component YAML, it took me a while to realize this, but the component YAML really is the magic. It's what tells
Absolutely.
Drupal what it can expect to feed into it.
Well,
'Cause
it
without
allows the component to do more than just be embedded in the template file and show up on a page,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But I agree with you 100%. The magic is in the component.yaml file.
Yeah, no, and I think that it basically allows you to also decouple kind of display features, like the way something looks from the business logic as well, because it's self-contained in a way
Yeah, and
that
it's actually one of the nice things about single directory components, and I don't know if everyone's gonna agree with this, but there's no PHP. Like, you can't have PHP in a single directory component, so it's a little bit liberating, in my opinion. It kind of removes that, you know here's a single directory component, but if you wanted to, you could, add this or add that, write this PHP code, but no, there's none of that. It's
yeah.
just template file, JavaScript, CSS, go.
And we've had a few shows that dive deeper into SDCs as well, so
Yeah.
the listeners can feel free to go back and listen to, if they want a deeper dive into SDCs, we can put those in the show notes as well.
I think you guys are touching on this a little bit, but why are they so popular and what are the great just started to touch on the benefits. So
Yeah.
why would someone want to pay attention to SDCs?
I think there's really 2 reasons.
Yep.
Number 1, because there's a lot of great design tools out there that will allow you to design things component by component. Figma, Storybook, and others. So it's a nice way of, taking what a designer does in a design system and applying it to Drupal using that same like component idea of everything self-contained. So that's reason number 1. I think the other reason is, quite frankly, Drupal Canvas. Drupal Canvas is going to it's the main thing that Canvas is going to consume is single directory components. And you can say the same thing about the UI suite set of modules and that whole module ecosystem. It revolves around Drupal Canvas as the food that it consumes to display things on the page.
I would say there's one other thing too, and this is from personal experience, and I think I use SDCs slightly differently than most people. Most tutorials assume you're, and even Drush Generate assumes you're putting the SDC in the theme, right? And the theme actually has some magic to make like props don't have to actually have to be declared if it's in a theme. But for several of my clients, I've been putting them in modules, which enforces that you have to declare every prop, every slot. You can't use it with a module without declaring those. But the other thing is it makes it truly portable, right? In my mind, having an SDC and a theme, it's helpful. It has benefits. It's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't make it truly portable. You can't like you can't well, maybe DripYard will change this, but you can't really just install a theme on a site still and just have it work, right? But if you're providing SDCs in a module, you can require that module. And because the other piece of magic is attributes, because attributes do percolate down into different levels, you can define certain display logic in an SDC and it will percolate down. Like if you have a button SDC and that button is in, so what I mean by percolating down is like if you have a button SDC and that button is used in multiple other SDCs like a card or a header or something else, you can define certain attributes on the button and they just kind of pass through. Like you can be like, hey, this is a tertiary button or secondary button or something. And you don't have to worry about remembering when you're integrating, oh, this button is being put in this particular parent component. So we need to make sure we set this attribute. No, it's just you pass the attributes in, and then when the parent SDC gets it, it just appends whatever attribute it needs to whatever okay, this is where overloading of terms gets a little confusing, but just sets the attribute on the attribute object and it automatically percolates down.
Yeah.
And that is really powerful.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of custom field formatters for a long time. And you obviously implement those in a module or a custom module, and it's a no-brainer to create a custom field formatter with a single directory component in a module these days. It's actually one of the examples that we do in the course that I teach.
Well, I've heard a lot about DrupalEasy just in my short time in Drupal. It seems like y'all have been a go-to name for long form Drupal education for a long time. So what are y'all specifically doing to help folks like, I guess, level up with these SDCs?
Yeah, so over the summer, we launched a new 2-week course. It's 6 half days over 2 weeks, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 weeks, called Professional Single Directory Components, and so far, it's going great. We beta tested it with our other long form alumni over the summer. I've run 2 public versions of it and a private version of it since then. The next semester is early November, and I mean, no lie, no marketing speak here, but it's actually almost sold out already, which I'm absolutely, tickled by. And, the goal of that is basically to take people who may have heard of single directory components or may have dabbled in it and really show them how to create them the right way. And I laughed earlier when Nick said that, you could write a single directory component without the component.yaml file. I actually, when I teach it, I basically tell our students that never create a single directory component without that component.yaml file. I teach the SDC devel module, which has a drush command that will validate that file against your template file and make sure that everything looks good and you don't have any props or slots that aren't represented in one or the other. So I really teach like the right way to create them. I think we cover all, if not the vast majority of every single key that's in that schema, that component.yaml file. And it's got a number of examples. I think there's 8 or 9 total examples. We use AI in some of them to create some single directory components, and a couple of those examples are using the components that we've created in class inside of Drupal canvas, which, as you can imagine, that's a very dynamic lesson because
Yeah.
Drupal canvas changes from class to class at this point. But
Yeah. Every day
um,
is changing.
yeah,
Minor programming note. The component YAML is always required. It's just that themes don't require you to define the props and slots. So you still would need like I think technically the only thing you need is the name.
yeah, I
Um,
think yeah.
which
For a while there, you just needed an empty file, but I think that's
yeah,
actually
it's makes it completely useless. I think it's a good strategy to just teach it as required because that's really what the utility is. Because like Drupal canvas won't know what to do with it if it's in a theme and doesn't have any props or slots defined.
nor will UI
So
suite. Yeah,
so
yeah.
when you're putting together a new class like this, how are you making? Because SDCs are still relatively new. They've only been
Yeah,
around for what, 18 months, maybe a
yeah,
year.
yeah.
How are you kind of exploring it and putting together kind of a curriculum that you think will help, you know, because I
Yeah,
assume that this isn't just for new Drupalers, it's also
right.
for, you know, existing Drupalers. How do you put together a curriculum like this?
Yeah, it's some are easier than others. This one wasn't too bad, but for me, the most like the thing that gets me rolling is I want to like make the case of why people should care about whatever I'm going to teach them.
Hmm,
Right. And a great example of this is when I years ago when I was developing our module development course, I just didn't want to teach services and dependency injection. I needed to be able to convince people that they care about this stuff and why should they care about this stuff. Because once you buy in that I need to learn this, it becomes easier to learn. So with single directory components, it's like, okay, so I can do everything already. I can build a custom theme in Drupal. Why should I learn this new thing and adjust my workflow to implement this new thing? So for me, the first step is really convincing them that there's enough benefit in this new thing for them to put the effort in to learn. And then after that, it's really I'm very best practice driven when it comes to this stuff. So what's the right way to create these things? What are the best tools? So we use Drush Generate and most of these for the scaffolding. I use that, like I mentioned, that SDC devel module for the validation. And I really want people to understand, props versus slots, when to use one versus the other. And if you're using a prop, it's strongly typed. And how, if you're a backend developer, just think about a single directory component as a method, right? You're
okay.
calling this thing and you're passing in arguments and you're passing in data and it's going to give you something back. And you want it to be strongly typed, like the best, PHP methods are.
I wanna
So
give you let me find this, but I wanna give you one tip that one of my clients found that's
yeah,
incredibly useful when doing SDCs,
yeah,
which is when you're and maybe you already do this, but one of the primary ways you get an SDC on a page is you use the include, sometimes use embed, but usually
yeah,
use include, right? And you name the SDC, right? And
yeah.
then you say with, and you give it all the arguments, right? Before you put with, you wanna put ignore missing, because if you've ever worked with an SDC and moved it or renamed it or changed it, and Drupal tries to load it and doesn't know what it is, the entire page blows up. But if you put ignore missing, and I'll put it so we can put in the show notes and you can show your class. But if you put ignore missing, if Drupal comes upon an SDC that it doesn't know about or can't find for some reason, or you removed a dependency, it just doesn't do that block and it won't blow up.
I have not seen that. That's really interesting. I will definitely check that out, that ignore missing.
Yeah, I'll
I
send
can't
that in
believe I
the
haven't
show.
run across that or seen that somewhere, but yeah,
This is the
yeah,
this is the first time that we've been talking about SDCs since I found this. So I thought I'd throw that in.
yeah,
And is this class? I think you alluded to this,
yeah,
but just to be explicit, this class
yeah.
isn't just for Drupal newbies. It's also for experienced
No, absolutely not.
Drupalers if they want to get it. You just have to not know about SDCs very well, right? That's a
Yeah,
fair
or you wanna
characterization.
learn the right way to create them, and, the class is basically 9 or 10 examples at this point that we're building different SDCs. It's very hands-on. Unlike most of my classes, at the beginning, I introduce the basic concepts of what we're gonna learn, and then through each example, we'll kind of build upon the last one and add a new concept that we haven't covered yet and just kind of build it up. And so it's a combination of it's a lot, I don't want to say a lot of repetition, but it's repetition. So it cements in your mind that, okay, first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and then I got to define this, and then I'm going to validate and boom, and then we're going to consume it somewhere.
Now, this couldn't have worked out any better today for Mike. So, the reason I say that, so John's internet went out today, and
Uh,
I jumped on a minute before the program started, and, I recently signed up for this course.
Did you really?
yeah,
I did.
yeah, yeah.
How funny is that? And I can explain
That's the
why.
best marketing.
So,
I know, fantastic.
so in the past few months, probably about a year, I've taken a couple of courses in an area that I wanted to learn about, so video editing and video production. And in August, I took like this 2-week, 3-hour a day course about some video editing tools. I came out of that. I thought I knew the tool pretty well. I came out of that like with my mind blown about like when I really took someone else's course and I learned what they had to say was the best way to do something. I came out of that course just learning way more than I ever
Right.
thought I would.
Hmm.
And SDC is something I wanted to get into. And I saw Mike post on Twitter that he was going to run this course. And I took the same approach. You know, my whole Drupal career, I kind of like you learn it as you go along and you fumble through it. And I'm like, here's one thing that I really wanted to learn well. Let me do the same thing. Let me sign up for this course and see how it should really be implemented. And I know I'm going to learn far more than just stumbling through it on my own. So, so I signed up and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Mike, what should I expect is the outcome of this? Like at the end of this 2 weeks that we're going to do in November, where should I be sitting after that?
Well, first of all, clearly I owe you dinner now at NetCamp, so thank you for all that. I like I said before, at the beginning of the course, I'm thinking about I gotta sell it. I gotta make you convinced that you need this stuff, right? So that you wanna learn, so that you're open to learning. And my goal by the end of it is not necessarily technical skill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but confidence. Like I want you to leave the course saying, "Oh, I know how to create a SDC now." You may not remember every little nook and cranny that we cover in the course, but we've taken the fear away of, utilizing and creating new SDCs. We've taken that fear away so you can say, "Okay, I can do this." I might stumble here and there, but, I can go back and look at the material, or I can ask questions or do a little research. But it's just leaving, it doesn't matter what you learn, whether you're learning how to, like, fix your car or, play a sport. It all comes down to confidence, that when it comes time for you to actually do it, you can say, "Okay, you've got a good attitude about it, and boom, I'm gonna do it because I've got that foundational knowledge." So that's for any of our courses. That's what we want people to get out of it.
Are you
And just I
sorry.
just want to add to that, like Nick was asking earlier if you think it's for, a Drupal newbie or not. I'm not a Drupal newbie, right?
Very few of our students. It's unbelievable to me, some of the people that sign up for our courses that I've known for a long time, or I know that they've been in the community for a long time. And a lot of times I'm like, "You don't need this course. Why are you taking this course?" And they're like, "No, I want, I know there's stuff that I may not know that well." And, they just want to go through it to make sure that they're not missing something, right? And so even with the SDC course and any of our courses, like, they're never done. Like, I will be adding, and I'm not sure how I'm gonna add it yet, but variants are a thing with single directory components that, as of this moment, are not in the course, but they will be for the November semester occurrence of the course. Yeah, so we wanna make sure that, we're providing this information so that even if, you've been around Drupal for a long time, you're a comfortable front-end developer, you're gonna get something out of it.
I had a question because I just had a baby a baby disturbance here, so I may have missed this, but when people take this kind of STC course, right? Is there hands-on kind of real world, like,
So
project
much.
exercise, or is it okay, it should not just conceptual or foundational, there's a
No,
lot of, like,
so,
hands-on.
yes, yeah, we do. It's all I mean, basically from class 1, it's hands-on. We do an opening section on post CSS, because I like to use post CSS for whatever I do in components. So we set that up. That's all hands-on, and then we've got 8 or 9, maybe 10 at this point, examples SDCs that we build together. And it's up to students
Uh,
whether or not they wanna do it, hands-on, or if they just wanna watch.
like, follow-up, is there, like, a specific kind of exercise that y'all do or project that y'all do in the course that really feels like it's the light bulb click for people that are kind of getting into SCCs, and is there a certain one?
I don't know, I think that's more of a question for our students than for me. I know the first example we do, I kinda call the tour de force, right? Because I've talked about props before, I've talked about component.yaml, but that first example, we go really slow, and we generate all the files, and then we go line by line through the component.yaml, and we learn how everything connects, and In the end, we've got a very, simple SDC, but we understand every single line of it. So that could be the light bulb moment for some folks. But then every example we do after that, we tweak it a little bit. We add a little bit more on top of it, make them a little bit more complex as we go. So I think it depends on the student where, that light bulb flickers on.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to channel John here a little bit. He's playing my role this week when he's listening in the background and asking some questions.
Yeah,
So I'm going to go there and say, so you mentioned post CSS. Why do you like that?
that was a difficult decision. The feeling I get, and in my experience and talking to other people, is that front end developers are moving away from SAS because modern Drupal is so powerful. And for a long time, I considered not using anything, just writing modern CSS for these things, for this class. And I landed on post CSS for a couple reasons. Number one, Drupal core uses it.
I was going to say that.
So yep. So that was reason number one. Reason number two, in the courses that I teach and the students that I talk to, or even the projects that I coach, with clients, a lot of people see NPM and setting this stuff up as like this magic. Like, okay, I'm going to run this command and cross my fingers and hope everything works. So when I kind of decided that, okay, maybe post CSS is what I want to use, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it a step further and I'm going to walk people through using NPM to set up post CSS, install these plugins, configure them. It's almost like an aside to the class because it's not strictly SDC related, but we've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. After I taught the beta class, a couple of the questions on the survey were, "Did you find it useful? Should I get rid of it?" Because I was really unsure about it, and the vast majority of the students were like, "No, leave it," because we learned a lot about it, even though it wasn't directly related.
I'll be honest. I know Core uses post CSS, and I understand part of the reasoning is because they don't want to have a build process for core themes, really. But I don't get post CSS,
Yeah,
really. I mean, I would prefer. I think I can also understand your take that from in general, like scaling back like the build tools is important because it's a class about something else. It's not a class about build tools. Keeping
right.
SAS, all that kind of stuff up to date is a nightmare.
Yeah,
But I I guess what's the benefit of using post CSS over something like just native CSS at this point?
yeah. Well, like I said before, I make the case for that in the class.
Okay,
And I I
so I
I
have to take
basically
your
make the
course to know
case
the
is
answer.
if you're coming from a SAS background,
Yeah.
then you might wanna take your mix-ins with you. So, I we use a PostCSS plugin that has their flavor of mix-ins. Auto prefixing, the backward compatibility with older browsers, which thankfully is becoming less and less of an issue as time goes on. What else do we there's a couple other plugins. I use most of the same plugins that Drupal core uses. The inline SVGs, I really like that one. That brings
Okay.
SVG files inline to CSS automatically. Those really nice media queries, I forget what that plugin is called, but it
Yeah.
allows you to write kind of more natural language media queries. So it's a lot of little things that, yeah, I think, again, once you take the fear out of a tool like
Yeah.
post CSS, it becomes easier for people to use, and it just becomes, you know, a safer alternative than just writing modern CSS. And hopefully, maybe in 5 years, we won't need it anymore. But
I I think that's helpful. John has another question going back a little bit
If John
further.
wants to argue with me, he should show his face. That's all I'm saying. So,
No,
yeah.
I think this is a good one though. But you had
Okay.
mentioned you're always updating the course, and you made
Yeah.
it sound like people have access to the
Yes.
materials ongoing. Like,
Yeah.
how are materials shared going forward? Like, if Steven wants to see an update in uh,
Yeah.
2 weeks
It's a
after.
Google Doc. Our curriculum is provided to students as Google Docs. I don't notify students when changes are made unless they're big changes. And then I'll put something. We have a DrupalEasy Slack workspace, private channels for all of our courses. So I'll put something in a channel if I've made a big change.
Okay.
But yeah, no. So any students do not lose access to the materials, the screencasts, any of that stuff.
Okay, I think we've I think we've covered a couple of aspects of this question, but it's worth
Yeah.
asking directly. Are there prerequisites to signing up?
Very low bar. I mean, we use the command line, you know? I recommend you use ddev and the Drupal recommended project to get your, get a fresh site up and running. You don't have to use ddev. Ddev's easiest because it has npm, so it allows us to do that stuff pretty easily. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big ddev supporter. Just some front end knowledge is helpful as well. You don't have to be an expert, but we do assume that you understand some site building, you understand a little bit about theme anatomy, but I normally design these courses so that if someone had taken my beginner class, they can roll right into any of our other classes.
Perfect.
So I have a question about and I'm coming at this from, preparing myself or being ready for the time it's going to
Yeah,
take this class. Could you quickly review like the structure of
sure.
the class? Like
Yep.
it's over a 2-week period, but
Yes.
it's not 2 weeks straight.
No. No. So it's funny because I originally designed this class to be 5 days, Monday through Friday, half days, or 3 hours actually. 3 hour classes, 5 days a week. And that's the way I taught the beta version. And the rest of our classes that we teach are 2 days a week for 2 half days a week. And I am not a fan of teaching 8 hour days back to back. Number one, it's exhausting. But number two, it's so much information for students to absorb in a short amount of time. And I know for a fact, just from the feedback that I get, that students appreciate that break between classes. I call it soak time,
Mhm.
right? The ability for them just to soak in the knowledge for a day, maybe review something if they were thinking about it, maybe play with something, on their own. Yeah, so the course is over 2 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 hours a day for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it's a very relaxed pace. Everything's recorded, and recordings are normally available later that same day, so, I get it. People have meetings or they have a family commitment that they can't get out of. They have to dip in and out of class. None of that's ever a problem. So it's $600 for 18 hours of instruction, which is, a pretty good deal, I think. If you look at like what a full day training at a DrupalCon is, I think we're giving you a pretty good bang for your buck for that time.
So how much of the 3 hours, Mike, are you is broken up between lecture and exercises and sort of working on your own to learn things?
After the first class, very little lecture. Even
Okay.
the first class doesn't have a ton, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I like it, and students have told me they like to be engaged. They like to be, doing things. So there's a couple places where there's some independent exercises where I'll stop talking for 15 minutes and have the students do something. But the vast majority of those 18 hours, we're working together. And every class I say the same thing that the less I talk, the better the class is. Right? So the more students interact, the more questions they have, the better the class is. This class, and I started with the professional module development class, I built in time. Like I don't want to be rushed teaching it. I never want to get to the point where I'm like, look, I can't take questions right now because we got to get through this example, right? None of that.
Yeah.
I want I want enough time so that a student asks me a question that I wasn't anticipating. We can take 15 or 20 minutes and dig in and still have the time that we need.
And
And how
and
much
how many
homework is how
students?
much homework is there outside of the class? 0. Okay.
0. Yeah.
And,
Again,
and how many?
you can do as much as you want, but there's never a class where I say, "Have this done by, Wednesday." Yeah.
And how many students in a course?
15 max.
15
Yep.
minutes.
Topping out at 15. Yeah.
The lack of being able to talk in your course, has that led you to the podcast? Is that why you do the podcast, so you can talk your head off there? I'm just kidding, Mike. But that being said, though, like, I see you got the teaching stuff down, you got the
Yeah.
podcast, but
Yeah.
recently I've seen this show and tell. What's that about?
Yeah. So the podcast, let me just address the podcast because every now and then people ask me about it, is I don't do it that much anymore, honestly. I try and do, like, 1 or 2 seasons a year, but quite frankly, you guys are killing it. and you have me on often enough, thank you for that, by the way, where when I think about scheduling some podcast episodes, over the past couple of years, I've always thought, man, I wish I could do it that like a video thing instead of a podcast. Because if we're talking about something, I want to be doing it, and that was kind of part of the germ of the idea for show and tell. The other part of that is I do office hours for our alumni every week. 50, well, let's say 51 weeks a year, or maybe 50. We around the holidays, maybe we miss one or two. But other than that, open office hours for our alumni every week for 2 hours. And students come, they ask me anything they want, as long as they can, somehow wedge the word Drupal into the question. Sometimes it's, current students asking about a lesson we just had. Sometimes it's alumni asking about something they're doing at work. Sometimes it's alumni asking about a module they heard about or a refresher on something. So a lot of those office hours are me saying, all right, let's take a look at that. Right. And I fire up my Drupal 11 site, I download a module and we start playing around. And students love that. And I've gotten so much feedback from students of, when I'm doing a demo and maybe I don't know what I'm doing, which is fairly often, or we hit a snag and we have to figure it out. Like students like to see other people overcome little snags so that they don't feel alone when they're doing it and they hit a snag. So between that idea and the podcast stuff, I'm like, you know what? I think a YouTube series is the way to go. And quite honestly, I'm pretty busy. So I wanted it to be low preparation time as well, which is kind of what office hours is. Office hours is I don't prepare. Students ask me a question and okay, let's see what we can do. So with show and tell, the idea is that there's something that interests me, or maybe someone's emailed me about it or a student has mentioned it. I'm like, I've never checked that out. I've never played with it. Let me try and get a subject matter expert, someone who knows what they're talking about, maybe a maintainer of the module, or with Nick, someone who actually worked on object-oriented hooks and core. Let me get them to join me for the goal is like 35 minutes an episode. We'll use my screen. I got a fresh copy of Drupal 11, and I'm going to try to accomplish the task. And maybe I succeed, maybe I don't, but the idea is we're going to learn something. I've got the guardian angel on my shoulder helping me out, and it's a lot of fun. Like I've got, a bunch. I've got 3 more that have been edited and are ready to be released. I've got some other ones scheduled. I've got a list of other people I want to reach out to. So I think it kind of hits the sweet spot for me where it's something that it's kind of a proven idea because I know our students like them, and it scratches the itches that I have of not just talking about something on a podcast and saying, "Hey, imagine you're going to the configuration page and doing this,"
Yeah.
but we're actually doing it.
Yeah, and you're sharing your screen. As somebody who was on a recent episode, it was nice because, I mean, I refreshed my memory in a couple of things, but, like, I didn't have to do a ton of prep beforehand
Yeah.
either,
No, I don't want
right?
anybody to have to do any prep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Just
it was
show
nice.
up and let's wing that. I mean, it sounds very unprofessional to say we're just gonna wing it, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
I love
It
it.
wa
I
it
I watched I watched one of the episodes this morning or yesterday.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Oh, that's very nice of you to
It's
say.
great.
No,
It's really
it's
great, Mike. And it's really needed. It's filling a hole
yeah.
that needs to be filled.
So I just published a blog post announcing it this morning, and I actually I'm glad you said that, Stephen, because it reminded me because I want to give a shout out to those of us who've been in the community for a while, and I put this in the blog post, may remember Drupal Dojo back in the Drupal 6.5 day. I don't even know when that was,
Yeah.
but it was I don't know if it was Josh or Matt. It was one of them from Pantheon who did a lot of the Drupal Dojo. And it was on I didn't even know was it Skype? I didn't even know what it was on, whatever screen sharing was available back then.
I don't remember.
But it was a very similar thing where they would say, "Okay, we're gonna open up Drupal Dojo and we're gonna play with, the blah module, whatever." And, they'd be like 2 hours long, and it was just someone figuring stuff out, sharing their screen, and it was great. I learned so much, and I think a lot of people learned so much by
The website
watching.
still exists.
I know, it was crazy that the website is still up. Drupal Dojo, it's not hasn't been updated in, I don't even know how long, but I hope that people watch show and tell and think about, like, maybe it's the spiritual successor to Dojo. That's the way I feel. That's, that's kind of my
Is
goal.
this replacing your office hours, Mike?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
And actually, so I haven't even said this out loud yet, but I actually think some of the show and tell episodes are gonna they're gonna I'm gonna record them during office hours, I think. So kind of like a
Oh,
live audience, so to speak.
yeah.
Because
I
I
mean,
do
that
demos
makes sense
often.
to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do them all the time during
Yep.
office hours, and I just did one. Was it last week or the week before? Someone hadn't seen Environment Indicator recently. So I did a
Oh,
full demo of the Environment Indicator module, and I should have recorded it because I could have, you know,
And it sounds like to me that you learn just as much as the
oh,
students in the, office hours as well, right?
it's something almost always something goes wrong. Almost always. And the funny thing is, so Nick and I hit this when we were recording his, and Nick had a great, and I still don't know if it's an analogy or metaphor, but we tried something and it didn't work. And Nick said we flew too close to the sun, like Icarus and all that.
yeah.
I was recording one the other day with Ted Bowman related to content templates in Drupal Canvas. And we accomplished the task that I was hoping to do during that show and tell. And Ted says, there's just one other thing we can try. And of course we tried it and it did not work. And I leveraged that same analogy, Nick. So I think I maybe even attributed it to you as well. But
Because
yeah, if something doesn't go wrong, I'm almost worried that, okay, maybe we're not doing enough, or people like it. My students, at least, they like to see stuff go wrong, and just the thought process of, okay, how do we overcome this?
it's filling a gap. I mean, it feel honestly, it also feels kind of the same tone as the new TD Cafe that Steven's been spearheading. Different flavor, I think,
Yeah,
but similar thing where it's like, hey, it's more of a it's
it's informal.
spontaneous, maybe is the wrong word, but it's more spontaneous, it's less structured.
Yeah,
And, I think maybe Stevens is earlier in the idea generation side where it's like, hey, let's have a discussion about something, and you're showing a solution or an exploration of
a
something. So,
task. It's very
but
task oriented.
it feels like it's in the same space.
Yeah, yeah. Can I
So,
just
Mike,
mention you can go to youtube.com/DrupalEasy. That's where you can find it.
Yep. We'll have
one
it.
thing we forgot to point out is
Mm.
where can people sign up to hang out with me in November?
Oh yeah, DrupalEasy.com/PSDC for professional single directory components.
Okay.
PSDC.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that as well, for allowing me to say that. Appreciate that.
Well, Mike, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Always great to be here. Love hanging out with you guys. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity you know, to say all of this and promote the class. Appreciate that. And actually, before we stop, while I have Hayden, I got to contact you at some point about sponsoring Florida Drupal Camp. And I
Oh,
figured as long as
he's
I know,
recording this
as long as we're
ask.
recording, I
Yeah.
figure, like, you can't say
This
no,
is
right?
ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
No, I cannot be trusted. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe you'll see some dollars in your coffer. Who knows?
maybe.
I
Okay.
don't know.
The best
I
I
don't
can do is a
know.
maybe. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I heard a yes. I think everyone else, I think
You're
well,
rotten,
so
Mike.
I will say, you guys were platinum sponsors last year, and that was greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for last year, and we certainly do hope that you will be on board for 2026.
I had a lot of fun at Florida Drupal Camp last year, and I remember the karaoke place we went was absolutely awesome. Called,
Great.
like, Big Daddy's or something like that. I don't remember. It was so fun, though. I
I
don't
think it's
remember.
packed. There were so many
Yeah.
people in
It
that
was
place.
so
Yeah,
packed. It was a lot of
that I
fun.
remember. Yeah,
Great time, though, in Florida. Yeah.
super duper.
Well, if you have any questions or feedback, you can reach out to Talking Drupal on the socials with the handle Talking Drupal, or you could email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with the hosts and the listeners also on Drupal Slack on the Talking Drupal channel.
And if you want to be a guest on Talking Drupal or our new show, TD Cafe, you can click on the guest request button in the sidebar at talkingdrupal.com.
Don't forget to promote your Drupal event coming up on Talking Drupal. You can do that by visiting talkingdrupal.com/TD promo.
And you can get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest host, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. You can sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And we love our patrons. It certainly helps us out. You can support us by going to talkingdrupal.com and choose become a patron.
All right, Mike, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I am Ultimike pretty much everywhere on social media and on Drupal.org. And you can always go to DrupalEasy.com/contact.
And Hayden, how about you?
Since Mike did that, I'm gonna say you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, but if you reach out to me for a sponsorship, you need to go through Mike. Anybody who wants a sponsorship now needs to reach out to Mike first, and then Mike can bring me their sponsorship request. So please reach
Fantastic.
out to Mike first.
That means I get to prioritize them as well. So even better. You're doing me a big favor. Happy
How
to
about
take
you?
that role on.
How about you, Stephen?
Stephen Cross with a PH everywhere.
You can find me at NixVan, NICXVAN, pretty much everywhere.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.